Judaism is communism. Atheism is the Jewish belief that there is no right and wrong. Communism is the Jewish belief that Gentiles have no property rights. Globalism is the Jewish belief that the planet is theirs. Judaism is the Jewish belief that Gentiles' lives have no sanctity. Jews around the world celebrated in 1917 when the Bolshevik communists, led by Zhukaiks Lenin and Trotsky, seized power in Moscow. They noted that the first legislative act passed by the new legislature was the Anti-Semitism Act. This law made it a criminal offense to defame Jews and Judaism. Even a joke about the Jews was classified as a hate crime punishable by 10 years in prison. Jews of Zion from America, Europe, and across the globe poured into Russia and its captive republics. The victory in Russia, they believed, validated the Talmud, their holy law, and these Jews wanted to be part of the great Jewish success. In America particularly, Jews everywhere were ecstatic. Rabbi Harry Wotton, in his book, A Program for the Jews and Humanity, stated, "The communist soul is the soul of Judaism." Hence it follows that in the Russian Revolution, the triumph of communism was the triumph of Judaism. Of course, the Jews quickly murdered the captured Russian Tsar and his entire family. The murder of the Tsar was a signal to the Jews in Russia that the bloodbath had begun in earnest. From that point on, the horrors grew and grew. Russia was soaked in blood. Robert Wilton, a long-time Russian news correspondent for the London Times, said in his book, The Last Days of the Romanovs, out of 556 important functionaries of the Bolshevik state, there were, in 1918 to 1919, 17 Russians, 457 Jews, and 82 others. Lenin, according to the Lenin Museum on Red Square in Moscow, was a Jew. His deputy, the bloody and cunning Leon Trotsky, was a Jew, and everywhere Jewish commissars were put in charge. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, in his classic history text, 200 Years Together, noted that even the commandants of the Soviet Gulag camps were predominantly Jewish and most were rabbis. Solzhenitsyn's sources recorded a staggering 66 million were victims of the communists. Churches were burned or turned into barns and brothels. Ministers and priests were taken to the Gulag. The Jews were convinced that their God, whom Jesus Christ identified in Scripture as the devil, had given them the huge empire of the Soviet Union as only the first conquest in a coming string of global victories. The Talmud promises the Jew or Jewish utopia. The entire world and all its non-Jewish peoples are destined to serve as slaves for the supposedly superior Jews, says the Talmud. The communists claimed that they were atheists. However, the tribal brainwashing of Judaism and the beliefs of the Jews that in the Talmud is an accurate forecast of the Jewish future made minds of the atheists a fertile ground for the propaganda of Judaism. In fact, communism is simply an outgrowth of Zionism. Zionism and communism are ideological heirs of the Judaic doctrines. The American Hebrew, September 10, 1920, bragged of this success. The Bolshevist revolution in Russia was the work of Jewish brains, of Jewish dissatisfaction, of Jewish planning, whose goal is to create a new order in the world. What was performed in so excellent a way in Russia, thanks to Jewish brains, and because of Jewish dissatisfaction and by Jewish planning, shall also, through the same Jewish mental and physical forces, become a reality all over the world. At the time, the Jews in Russia made up only 1.5% of the total population. 1.5%. By cunning lies and manipulation and thanks to the money of Jewish bankers in Germany, Britain, and the United States, Russia fell, and Satan was able to do his dirty work. Today, in the US, we have about 2.5% of the population that is Jewish. But the same forces are at work to destroy this nation. The parasitical Jews are using the US as proxy to conquer the Middle East. They have in their sights a new world order. The Jewish neocons, aided in their immense crimes by the deceived and naive Christian Zionists, will, if they have their way, do to America what Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin did to the vast Soviet Empire. In 1920, Sir Winston Churchill, who later became Great Britain's leader in World War II, wrote an editorial in the Illustrated Sunday Herald of London. He warned of a worldwide revolutionary conspiracy for the overthrow of civilization and for the reconstitution of society on the basis of arrested development, and envious malevolence. Churchill wrote that the Jewish subversives have played a definitely recognizable part in the tragedy of the French Revolution. It has been the mainspring of every subversive movement during the 19th century. And now at last this band of extraordinary personalities from the underworld of the great cities of Europe and America have gripped the Russian people by the hair of their heads and have become practically the undisputed masters of that enormous empire. In 1935, the most famous rabbi in America, Rabbi Stephen Wise, a friend of President Roosevelt, boasted, "Some call it Marxism, I call it Judaism." The American Bulletin, May 5, 1935. Fast forward to Russia, under President Putin. In June 2013, in a courageous speech before the Jewish and Tolerance Center in Moscow, Putin shocked the assembled Jewish guests by stating what the so-called free press of the West had covered up and censored for almost a century. The decision to nationalize this library, in 1917, was made by the first Soviet government, whose composition was the 80–85% Jewish. These government bureaucrats were guided by the ideological considerations and supported arrest and suppression. This book, Behind Communism, by Frank Britton, further elaborates on the astute knowledge held by Winston Churchill, Vladimir Putin, and others who have studied world history. It explains who Karl Marx was. He was the grandson of a Jewish rabbi. It reveals how a small band of Jewish criminals masterminded by Jewish bankers in New York and Germany, took over one of the world's greatest empires. The Jews founded a monstrous pathocracy in Soviet Russia. A pathocracy is a nation run by a minority who are psychopaths. These psychopaths were, in fact, serial killers, much like American criminals Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and Henry Lee Lucas. These men do not think like you and I, and they had neither empathy nor remorse. They used the religion of Judaism and the ideology of communism as tools for plunder and death, convenient strategies that disguised their murderous pathology. It is the Jewish Talmud that forms the basis of this deadly pathology. The Kabbalah assists in its formation. Today, the Jews continue to be led by madmen who use Judaism, Zionism, and the chosen people myth as tools to deceive and manipulate. These evil men and women are determined to rule the earth, and they intend to murder most of its non-Jewish inhabitants. 66 million died in the communist era in Russia. The Jewish ideology was responsible for tens of millions more deaths in China and in Eastern Europe. We must understand the past in order to ensure a safe and secure future. Unless the dangerous and wicked religion and political ideology of the Jew and its revolutionary and racist doctrines are exposed, we will surely be forced to endure a horrible repeat of this dark period. I firmly believe that this book, Behind Communism, is a great contribution to understanding the past. Let us use the knowledge, then, to guide us into future light. You can learn more by visiting www.communismbythebackdoor.tv, as well as www.thegreateststorynevertold.tv and www.smoloco.com, plus www.davidduke.com.